Hi everyone. I hope he was saying good things about me. I don't understand Turkish, unfortunately. So my talk today is going to be CTO in a small startup. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where Zapier came from, what we are, just to kind of set the stage. Zapier is a service that lets you connect a lot of different web apps. And we started about 4 years ago in 2011, and it was just 3 guys working on weekends, nights in the basement, hacking away, building what would be Zapier. We went through, I want to say, like 3 or 4 versions of Zapier before we came to the version we were eventually launched. And it was difficult. It was a kind of different world to live in that early time. It was a lot of building stuff, moving really quick, trying to figure out kind of what we were doing. And as we grew, nowadays we're doing hundreds of millions of API calls. We use AWS, which was a great talk. Thank you, Carlos. We have 32 employees across the entire world. We have 12 engineers. And that growth stage between it's just us 3 and having a dozen engineers was pretty tricky. And that's kind of what I was interested in when I talked to Arda. He said, talk something about advice for startups or something. And I was like, this is the talk I would have liked to have seen when I was starting Zapier. Because as we grew, we ended up raising money. We went to Y Combinator. We moved out to California. A lot of things changed. We started hiring people. We actually had like a roadmap. So it wasn't just like, what do you want to do today? What should we build? We actually had to plan out what we wanted to do. So things changed and it got more complicated. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. So I'm just going to hop into it. So the question is, what the heck is a CTO? This is the kind of question that I was like asking myself when we were hiring our first couple engineers. And is it like a benevolent dictator for life, which is kind of in the software community, someone who watches over the code? Is it some sort of like super manager or a super hacker? What is this? So as I started kind of looking into it, I had to ask a lot of people advice about this. And I talked to a lot of different companies. I talked to Buffer, Unbounce, a lot of these kind of American companies to figure out what it was that they did, because they were a little bit bigger than us. So I was seeking out a lot of advice. And I got an answer. Nobody really knows. It's okay. It's a very fuzzy sort of like role, and something that I don't think you can really, put into a box, really. But I do have a couple things that I found, like as I talked to people, that were kind of common patterns for how a small tech-centric startup grows. But I want to qualify it first. This should be a company that has software at the core of its business. Zapier is very, very technical. We work with 500 different apps with all these different APIs, so we're a very technical company. It's during the initial growth stage, so between 0 and a dozen engineers. And it's really about that CTO that's leading the tech organization for the first time. If you've done it before, you kind of know where everything is, but this is about the folks that maybe don't have that. So here we go. I'm kind of a nerd. I like playing video games, so there is an upgrade tree that I found was like a common sort of theme. So I figured this would be a good thing to start off with. And what I mean by an upgrade tree is like this. You'll have to excuse the nerdiness. But as you get more experience, you level up, and you can choose different branches, right? So I figured I'd go and make one for CTOs. So the first one is the solo hacker. It's 1 or 2 engineers. And this is the part that I was talking about when we're working in the basement. It's just, us 3. And this is really a very fun, very fast time. You're building a lot of stuff. You're iterating really quickly. There's really no communication or management overhead because you're all in sync. You're all just trying to figure out what is going to work. So this is actually a lot of fun, and I would say that this is the first stage you're going to go through as a startup founder. The next stage is when you're starting to hire people, and usually this is when you hire friends. That's a great tip. Hire your friends because you know you can work with them, you know how smart they are, and they just fit right in. This small team is about where you start to feel the pain of moving from that hacker to something else, right? It still feels pretty good because you only have a couple engineers. I have 2 to 6 engineers here as kind of the sweet spot for this. And it's pretty good. The communication overhead's very small. You're still pretty much in sync. Things are happening that you know about. Nothing's really a surprise. And then it gets a little weird. This is when you have between 6 and 12 engineers. And this has like kind of a unique point in every sort of startup where you no longer are constantly talking with every single person on the team. And you have to start doing this scary thing called management, which for me was totally different. Like I had been coding and hacking, and that stuff came natural to me. I love that. But now you're starting to do a lot of stuff. This is where communication overhead starts to like blow right past the time you get to code. And it gets tricky because things are happening, you don't know why they're happening. You're trying to figure out how to hire people who aren't your friends. So things change really quickly in this stage. And this is where you get a choice. You get to choose between going VP of E, which is Vice President of Engineering, which is usually like a manager. I had no clue about this. This is usually like the person who puts in place process, puts in place tools to make the team more productive, and helps the engineers work through stuff. You can kind of think of it as kind of a people wrangler, right? And then on the completely opposite side, you have the CTO, which tends to be more of a hacker sort of a role. This is someone who knows the system in and out, knows where all the skeletons are in the closets, knows where all that stuff is happening, and can reach out and help people in an intimate manner and help mentor them and make architectural decisions and lead them down the right path. So you really have two different roles that you can go down here. And I just didn't really know about this. This is, here we go. This is the kind of like simple sort of like outline that I didn't even know that you had to like choose between the two. I just thought you were just going to like de facto manager. This tends to be probably 60 to 70% of startups that I talk to went down this route. Whichever route you go, whether you go up to the manager or down to the hacker here, you do have to find someone who will be the opposite side. And that's really tricky. So that's one of those things that I just wasn't aware of. Actually, a little bit of a breakdown here. I added the time coding and confidence level. This is about generally how good you're feeling about that. So in the early days, it's 1 or 2 engineers. You spend all your time hacking. It feels great. Everything's wonderful. Whenever you get that small team, it still feels pretty good. You're spending about 80% of your time hacking, maybe 20% communicating. And you still feel pretty good. You're feeling like 90% confident about this. And then when it gets to the a bit of everything is where it gets much more difficult, and you spend less than 50% of your time as you get more and more people. There's more and more people to facilitate, and it just doesn't feel as good. You feel like something's off, something's amiss. And that's okay. That's generally how it goes, and then you have to decide whether to go manager or hacker. So how do you navigate that tree? And I got great advice from, I think, one of the Twitch TV founders who said, you really need to figure out where you get your dopamine hits. Do you get your hits and start feeling really good when you help someone do something that they were struggling with and they nail it? Or do you get them when you solve some sort of a technical problem? And that should give you a little bit of guidance on which way you go. So to wrap this up, I do want to talk about some interesting anecdotes, some interesting stories of things that I picked up, because I interviewed probably 15 or 16 different founders and CTOs and asked them, okay, so what are the things that you noticed that were difficult? And then across all these are the sorts of things that popped out. Embrace the breaking points. It's a funny kind of a thing. I would ask people, tell me your biggest mistake. What was the hardest part about what you did? And how did you kind of fix it? How would you prevent it, next time around? And everybody kind of stopped and they thought a bit, and they would give me some sort of something, but then when I would ask them, well, what would you do to prevent that? They would say, I probably wouldn't. We needed to go through that phase to really figure out what we were trying to do. Like, I had to learn the opposite side to learn the proper side. So this breaking point is kind of treated more like scaling a service. You run into the bottlenecks, and then you fix them once you hit them. It's much more efficient than trying to predict them, because prediction is very difficult, especially in something like a startup. The next piece, here we go, no man's land. This is kind of the name that I gave that 6 to 12. There's a lot of things that happen in that 6 to 12 where everything's a little bit of everything, it's kind of confusing, that pop out. It's like, you notice yourself saying things like, how come, this person didn't know about this? And don't they know about what they should have done? And these sorts of questions are kind of a hint that you're in this area where it's difficult to either go one way or the other, either hacker or engineer or manager, without having someone could kind of pick up the slack on the other side. So you're not big enough to really warrant that, but you're not small enough to where you can ignore it, right? So you're kind of stuck in this middle part. And if you find yourself saying things like, why did X, Y, Z do this? A quick tip is you're not communicating enough. A lot of times, that was a common theme is founders and leaders in sort of a tech org need to talk, need to over-communicate. Say things over and over again, almost to where everybody, when they hear you say it again, they roll their eyes because it's like, oh, here we go again. But that's important because then everyone's on the same page. People who join the organization get that. But between that stage, it's really hard to kind of do both. The next thing is mimicking structure. So often I would hear these CTOs say, well, we saw Spotify do this, or we saw Amazon do this, or we saw Microsoft used to do this, or Google used to do this. And then they would adopt that sort of structure, which is a great strategy because if you're innovating in tech, you should not be innovating in management. You should not be innovating in how you organize your company. You should be innovating with your tech, with your code, with your product. So the right solution for this is to just pick out things that you think are interesting and try them. Try them in your organization and just mimic those. And over time, you become eventually unique where you have this kind of melting pot of ideas and ways to structure your organization that no one else really has. And maybe you'll come up with a few things on your own, but that really shouldn't be your goal. You should really be trying to just pick up things other people are doing and save yourself the hassle. That's a big theme I saw. And the last one was focus up. This actually comes from personal mistakes. Whenever we started hiring engineers, and all of a sudden we were like blown away. We're like, oh my goodness, we have 4 engineers now. We can actually do a lot more stuff because we were juggling, us as like the founders and the first couple employees, we're juggling so many things, as you do. And so we just thought like, oh, okay, if we're all kind of handling 2 or 3 projects, 2 or 3 times 4, so that means we could probably do anywhere between 8 and 12 projects at a time. Nope. That was a bad idea. Because what happens is you're introducing a lot more threads of communication. It gets much more difficult to keep track of what's going on and to also keep everybody on the same page. So really when you hit that and you have more resources, the right solution is to either hold steady on terms of workload or pull back even a little bit. And the way we did this is we picked one big thing that we wanted to work on. I'm actually going to talk about that in my talk later today, the Rube Goldberg APIs. We picked a big project that we all focused on and made it super clear to everyone that like, hey, this is our big priority right now. There's some secondary stuff going on, and it's great and it's really important, but everything kind of is second to this number one goal. So all that together, I hope will be a little bit of a help to anyone out there who's trying to navigate the waters of an early startup, especially as the kind of technical founder. What you have in store for you, it's okay to be a little bit confused and delay some of that stuff and then figure it out as you go. That's pretty much par for the course. So thank you. If I missed anything, I'd love to talk to someone about this. This is a favorite topic of mine. Thanks.